Well, the electric Hummer is here, folks, and we're going to be talking to Sam Abuelsamid, an EV analyst for Guidehouse, about what that means for GM, what it might mean for electric vehicle sales in general, and just how much fun is this thing going to be? I mean, you can get a version of it with 1,000 horsepower, if you can imagine. So, welcome to the interview, Sam.
Good to be back with you again, Markham.
Now, I have a hard time wrapping my head around 1,000 horsepower Hummer, which is gigantic as all Hummers are, that can reputedly do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3 seconds. What? Tell me about this thing.
Well, I think if you get your head close enough to the wheel, it'll wrap your head around its axle for you with that kind of horsepower and torque. Um, but yeah, I mean, this thing is just like a lot of the high-end EVs that have been coming out. This thing is ridiculously powerful. We've had the Lucid Air recently with over 1,000 horsepower. There's a version of the Tesla Model S that's coming out next year, the Plaid, with that kind of power. But in a truck, this is the first truck, electric truck, to have that kind of performance. And I think the thing that we have to keep in mind is this is the first of GM's new Ultium system powered EVs. But I think this is actually going to be very much a niche product. They're pushing this one out first to get attention and get mind share for GM as an EV manufacturer. But I think the actual number of these things that are going to be sold, especially the first year, because for the first year it's only going to be this so-called edition 1, this first edition that has 1,000 horsepower. And then they'll start rolling out versions that have somewhat less power than that in following years. So and the price point, here in the U.S., $114,000 U.S. dollars. This is not going to be a mainstream truck by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's going to be very interesting. And I think shortly after this launches, I think we'll start to see some other EVs, on the same platform, but at more reasonable power levels. Probably a Chevy pickup, which we did see a picture of at the EV Day that GM did back in March.
So, I mean, I've interviewed you before about GM's Ultium battery and their platform,
Mhm.
because I think that's an important part of this, right? Because it's all
Yeah.
integrated. And how is GM going to take what it learns from the Hummer and what it's done with the Hummer and then apply that to other products? So you mentioned a pickup, but I imagine there'll be vans and SUVs and all sorts of things.
Yeah, so at that EV Day, GM showed us They showed us a dozen different vehicles that are all based around this architecture. And one of the beauties of EVs, as I think we've talked about previously, is that they're actually a lot easier to scale up and down than an internal combustion powertrain. To go from 1,000 horsepower EV to a 200 or 300 or 400 horsepower, you it's actually a lot easier. Than you don't have to design multiple engines and multiple transmissions. The motors, you can just add more layers to it, to make it longer, add more power to it. Batteries, you can put in more modules. In the case of the Hummer, it's interesting that they're actually doing a dual layer stacked, so 2 layers of modules stacked on top of each other, whereas other vehicles, smaller vehicles, will have just a single layer of modules. So it becomes quite easy to scale it. And so the same technology that they've developed that they're going to use on this will be used in various sizes for other types of vehicles that are much more mainstream and high volume.
Now, I was quite surprised to read that the range for this vehicle could be up to, if I remember, it's almost 600 kilometers
Yeah,
to
about
charge.
they said over 350 miles, so about 600 kilometers. And again, this is a full size pickup, so I've seen it in person. It's roughly the size of a Chevy Silverado or a Ram or an F-150, and so it's got a lot of room for batteries. They are not saying yet exactly what the battery capacity is going to be on this thing. Probably somewhere between 150 and 200 kilowatt hours. So we're talking a big battery, but this is also going to be a big, heavy truck. It's got a lot of stuff in it. It's probably going to weigh close to 3 tons, empty. And so, it's not going to be nearly as efficient as something like a Chevy Bolt, for example, or a Tesla Model 3. The kilowatt hours per mile that it uses, or watt hours per mile, are going to be a lot higher than for a more reasonably sized vehicle.
One of the things that strikes me, though, Sam, is that with the recent battery and technology announcements we've seen from Tesla and some of the other manufacturers, we can look out to 2023, 2024, 2025, when batteries are going to be cheaper, they're going to be more powerful, higher energy density. And then it looks like, if I was looking into my crystal ball, manufacturers like GM are really going to be able to build all sorts of vehicles that, they can go at the bottom end of the range with maybe 200 kilometers. They can go at the top end. They can build SUVs or compact cars. I mean, this is exciting times for the industry.
Oh, absolutely. And this is exactly what GM's strategy is, around Ultium is, a very modular design where they can readily, as the cell chemistry cell chemistries evolve, they can rapidly from one year to the next switch to a different type, a different cell chemistry that maybe has more energy density or more power, whatever they need for a particular application. And the way they've architected the system, with the battery management system being at the module level, integrated in the modules rather than the pack, it makes it very easy for them to make those kinds of changes with relatively little extra engineering effort.
Final question, Sam: what else is in the Hummer that maybe is worthy of mention?
I mean, they've actually put a lot of really cool features in here, for, what is targeted as an off-road lifestyle pickup truck. For one of the things, it's got four-wheel steering, and they've put in something they call a crab mode. So when you're navigating through a narrow trail, a narrow canyon, you can enable crab mode, and what it'll do is steer all four wheels in the same direction, front and rear, so you can literally go almost sideways with it to get around obstructions. The other thing, with such a big vehicle, again, when you're off-roading, visibility is a key, and it's hard to see out of something this big. They have 18 cameras mounted around this thing, including a number of them that are actually mounted in the floor behind clear windows, so they're water sealed, and so you can see literally what's underneath the truck or what's right in front of it, where you normally wouldn't be able to see. So you can see what kind of obstacles you're going to have to deal with. So and also the air suspension system that can raise and lower it by about 6 inches. So you can lift it up to go over rocks and boulders, and then drop it down when you're on the highway for better aerodynamics. So lots of cool features in this.
Sam, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate it.
Happy to talk to you always.